After weeks of dithering and debate, Germany has finally agreed to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine in a pivotal moment for the war. Even before the war started, Germany was accused of doing too little to help, sending helmets to Ukraine when everyone else was sending anti-tank missiles. Here, we examine what lies behind Germany's reluctance to hand over its weapons, and why that could finally be about to change. It goes almost without saying that Germany has a troubled history when it comes to war in Europe. When the Second World War ended with Nazi defeat, the last thing anyone wanted to see was a powerful German military re-emerge, least of all, the Germans themselves. The Nazi assault on Russia left so many millions dead that, by the time the war was over, not even the Kremlin could give an accurate estimate of the toll. It ultimately led to the destruction of most of Germany, with thousands killing themselves rather than fall into Russian hands. Millions of women were also raped as Stalin's troops exacted their revenge. Sheltering under the NATO umbrella during the Cold War, West Germany adopted pacifism as the guiding principle in its foreign relations and has kept it that way for decades. Breaking with this mindset over the war in Ukraine has proved difficult. Providing tanks is especially fraught because the last time German armor rolled east, it was headed to invade Russia in some of the bloodiest battles humanity has ever seen. Coupled with fear of its own power, Germany is also contending with a sense of historical responsibility to Russia for the destruction wrought by Hitler's armies. For decades after the Second World War, half the country was part of the Soviet bloc, and many of the cultural and political ties forged during that time still exist today. Even the part of Germany that was not under Soviet control forged close ties with Moscow thanks to Ostpolitik, a policy of deepening relations which began in 1969. Until the start of the war in Ukraine, Berlin under Angela Merkel still thought that trading with Russia was the best way to ensure peace in Europe. Scholz's SPD party has shared especially close ties with Russia in the past. When Putin ordered his troops across the Ukraine border, Germany's attitude appeared to change in an instant. Scholz abruptly cancelled the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, a massive new gas pipe running from Russia to Germany, and declared Zeitenwende, meaning the dawn of a new era. Germany's allies hoped Berlin was about to drop its soft approach to Moscow and assume a leading role in protecting Europe, having once been one of its greatest threats. But old habits are hard to break. First, Scholz stalled on a decision to send Ukraine Marder fighting vehicles. Then came heel-dragging on Leopard and Iris-T air defences. When Ukraine was begging for Patriot batteries to protect its power plants last year, Germany offered to send one to neighbouring Poland instead. Scholz eventually relented in each of those cases. All of these systems are now in Ukraine or on their way there, but each time he's been accused of doing too little and too late. Supporters say this is an example of Scholz's Besonnenheit, or level-headedness, and is typical of the way Germany makes its decisions. But critics say Moscow sees this as weakness and division, which emboldens Putin into thinking that if he pushes just a little harder, then he can break Western unity. Some have even suggested that Scholz is still sympathetic to Russia and is hoping things can go back to the way they were before the war. All of this came to a head when Ukraine's allies began seriously discussing the prospect of sending tanks into battle. Kyiv's commanders want hundreds of them to repel a Russian spring offensive and then to launch counterattacks to liberate their territory. Ukraine wants German Leopard tanks most of all because there are around 2,000 of them in Europe, owned by a dozen or so countries. This means they can be supplied quickly, relatively easily, and in great enough numbers to make a difference. The only thing standing in the way was Germany. Not only did Scholz need to give permission for Germany's own tanks to be sent, but he also needed to greenlight other countries wanting to send their Leopards. At a key meeting of allies at Ramstein Air Base on January the 20th, the world waited to hear his decision and was told he couldn't make up his mind. It seems Scholz was still stuck in his ways. aside from the weight of history on his shoulders, Scholz was likely weighing up some very real security concerns. Britain had already pledged Challenger 2 tanks for Ukraine, but was about to replace them with Challenger 3, meaning if Russia captured one, the technology inside would soon be replaced. But in Germany's case, the Leopard 2 is not due to be replaced for another decade, meaning Russia would get a good look at all of its current technology and how to defeat it. Nevertheless, criticism from Germany's allies was quick and damning. Poland suggested it could defy Berlin and send tanks without permission, and was building a coalition of like-minded nations to join in. Washington reportedly read the Riot Act to Scholz's man at Ramstein, and even his own coalition partners in Germany began to threaten rebellion. 5 days after the crunch meeting, the Chancellery caved. Germany agreed to send tanks, prompting the US to pledge its own Abrams tanks as well. Ukrainians were obviously quick to celebrate Scholz's decision, but quiet fist bumps will probably have been taking place in other European capitals as well. After decades of Germany taking a back seat in European defence, highlighted by President Trump when he bashed Angela Merkel for failing to contribute a fair share to NATO.
The military, we protect them for nothing. Not anymore, by the way. You know, in NATO, I said you got to pay.
Many will now hope that Berlin is ready to step up to the plate. It took a year of brutal war on his doorstep, but it seems Scholz has finally made up his mind to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. Germany's true Zeitenwende may just have begun. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.